SITREP World Briefing for May 7th, 2026. Israel carried out new strikes in Lebanon, including an attack on Beirut and a separate airstrike in the southern town of Saksakieh after a Hezbollah ceasefire that took effect in mid-April. The strike in Saksakieh killed 4 people and injured 33, while the Beirut attack was described as Israel's first strike on the Lebanese capital since the ceasefire began. Israeli forces said the Beirut strike targeted a senior Hezbollah figure, linking the attack in the capital to Israel's broader campaign against the Iran-backed Lebanese armed group. The Saksakieh raid, which hit a house in southern Lebanon, added to fears that Israeli operations beyond the border zone could pull Lebanon back toward a wider confrontation. The renewed Israeli action is significant because Beirut carries major political weight in Lebanon, while southern towns such as Saksakieh sit close to the areas most exposed to repeated exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah. By striking both the capital and the south within the span of the fragile truce, Israel has signaled that the mid-April ceasefire has not prevented it from pursuing targets it says are tied to Hezbollah. The United States put forward a proposal to end the war with Iran, and Tehran began reviewing it. Reports said the plan was intended to formalize an end to the fighting, while Pakistan, acting as a mediator, said it was trying to turn the ceasefire into a permanent end to the war. The proposal left unresolved major U.S. demands and did not guarantee a final settlement. Trump publicly predicted a rapid conclusion and warned that the United States could resume bombardment if the negotiations collapsed. Separate reporting described fresh momentum toward an agreement, but stressed that Trump's hopes came with caveats. Financial markets reacted to the possibility of de-escalation. Oil prices fell, and stock markets rose after reports of a deal in progress. For Tehran, reviewing the U.S. proposal means weighing immediate military relief against unresolved strategic issues that have driven the confrontation with Washington for years. Iran's leadership has long treated outside pressure over its regional posture and national security policies as questions of regime survival, while the United States has tried to use military and economic leverage to force concessions. If Iran accepts terms that merely stop the war without settling core disputes, both governments could soon return to the same brinkmanship that produced the latest conflict. Russia rejected Ukraine's unilateral ceasefire around Kyiv, warned foreign diplomats to leave the capital, and then carried out attacks that Ukrainian officials said broke the truce. Moscow issued the warning ahead of its World War II Victory Day commemorations, threatening retaliatory strikes if Ukraine disrupted events tied to the celebrations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia had spurned the ceasefire, while reports from Kyiv said Russian attacks hit civilian targets, including a kindergarten. Zelensky responded by saying Ukraine would decide its next steps depending on the situation tonight and tomorrow, and he warned that Kyiv would respond in kind if Russian attacks continued. By warning diplomats to leave before the strikes, Russia created an unusually explicit public signal that it expected military action around the Ukrainian capital. Kyiv has remained the political center of Ukraine's war effort since Russia's full-scale invasion began, so attacks there carry far greater meaning than tactical battlefield pressure alone. Strikes or threats timed to major Russian state ceremonies are designed to show that Moscow can still impose insecurity on the capital, even when diplomatic gestures such as a ceasefire are on the table. For Ukraine, the immediate issue is whether to absorb the attacks or retaliate during a period when global attention is focused on Moscow's commemorations. Millions of voters across the United Kingdom cast ballots on Thursday in local and regional elections. Polling stations opened with contests framed as an early test of Labour's standing beyond Westminster. The elections also put a spotlight on rival parties seeking to convert dissatisfaction with the government into local gains. The voting was also expected to showcase the rise of both hard-right and left-wing populist forces, adding to the political challenge facing Labour. Local elections matter because they can shape perceptions of momentum inside the party and among opponents long before the next national vote. These contests, while local in scope, often serve as a national barometer of whether a governing party is keeping public confidence on day-to-day issues such as services, taxes, and leadership. The immediate significance lay less in any single council result than in whether Labour could avoid broad punishment at the opening of polls. Singapore's parliament unanimously backed a motion declaring that the country must not allow the shift to artificial intelligence to produce jobless growth, turning a broad concern about automation into a formal cross-party position. Lawmakers debated the issue for more than 7 hours, with 24 members of parliament, including 7 from the Workers' Party, speaking on how AI could reshape jobs and livelihoods. The unanimous outcome signaled that the government and opposition both see the labor market effects of AI as a central policy challenge. Manpower Minister Tan See Leng said Singapore would not leave the future of work and livelihoods to chance, stating that ministers expect AI's effect on employment to intensify as adoption gathers pace and scale. That stance reflects Singapore's dependence on a highly skilled workforce and its long-standing effort to pair industrial upgrading with worker retraining. By tying economic policy to employment outcomes, Parliament indicated that growth driven by AI will be judged in part on whether workers can move into new roles. The debate matters beyond labor policy because Singapore presents itself as a regional technology hub that actively welcomes digital investment while maintaining a tightly managed social compact. A unanimous parliamentary vote gives the government political backing to pursue training, transition support, and other intervention measures as companies deploy AI more widely. It also sets a public benchmark for future policy. If automation lifts output but weakens hiring or wages, ministers will face their own stated commitment that the AI transition must not come at the expense of broad-based livelihoods. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is due to go to the Vatican and Italy on Thursday for a mission aimed at easing strains between Washington and Pope Leo XIV, the first American pontiff. The planned visit follows criticism by President Donald Trump that heightened friction with the Holy See, with Rubio expected to use the meeting to reassure the Vatican while also advancing the administration's diplomatic line on Iran and the wider Middle East. France 24 reported that Rubio will meet Pope Leo on Thursday, making the encounter politically delicate because the Secretary of State is both America's top diplomat and a senior Catholic official representing a White House that has publicly criticized the Pope. The Vatican carries influence in global diplomacy beyond its small territory, and a direct meeting between Leo and Rubio matters because it could shape how the Holy See positions itself on the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran and other flashpoints. The stakes for both sides go beyond a single audience in Vatican City. Pope Leo XIV, as the first U.S. pope, occupies an unusual position in which his nationality links him symbolically to American politics, even as his office requires independence from any government, while Rubio is expected to promote Trump's agenda at a moment when the administration's rhetoric has complicated relations with the Holy See. Thursday's planned talks will test whether Washington and the Vatican can restore a workable channel on questions of war, diplomacy, and the role of U.S. leadership in the Catholic world. Airlines cut about 13,000 flights worldwide in May, and increased ticket prices after the conflict in the Middle East drove up jet fuel costs, prompting British authorities and industry officials to urge passengers in the United Kingdom not to cancel trips out of fear of fuel shortages. The disruption described on May 6 was global rather than limited to specific inbound routes to Britain, with carriers trimming schedules and warning travelers to expect higher fares as aviation fuel became more expensive across international markets. For the United Kingdom, the immediate issue was not evidence of a nationwide fuel shortfall at airports, but the effect of higher energy costs on travel planning, pricing, and airline schedules serving British passengers. Britain is one of Europe's busiest aviation markets, and even when fuel remains available, a sharp rise in jet fuel prices can quickly feed through to ticket costs, route reductions, and operational changes by airlines trying to protect margins. Officials stressed that travelers should check directly with carriers and airports before changing plans. A hantavirus outbreak aboard the expedition cruise ship MV Hondius sickened passengers in the Atlantic Ocean off Cape Verde, and led to emergency medical evacuations as health authorities tracked a rare cluster linked to the voyage. 3 passengers had died, and others had fallen ill by Wednesday, while 2 confirmed hantavirus patients and 1 suspected case were taken off the ship before it continued towards Spain's Canary Islands. The vessel had been left waiting at sea for days as officials assessed the risk to people on board and to ports along its route. Laboratory findings identified the Andes strain of hantavirus in at least some of the cruise-linked cases. South Africa's health ministry said the strain had been found in 2 confirmed cases linked to the outbreak, and health agencies continued to describe the broader public risk as low, while close contacts were monitored. Hantavirus is more commonly associated with exposure to infected rodents, which has made the Hondias outbreak an international public health concern because a cruise ship creates prolonged confined contact among travelers from multiple countries. The outbreak also prompted scrutiny of Argentina, where the MV Hondias set sail, as officials investigated whether the source of infection could be linked to rising hantavirus activity there. Argentine authorities and experts were examining the connection, while broader reporting pointed to an increase in cases in the country. Determining whether exposure began before embarkation would shape contact tracing across the ship, the passengers' flights, and the countries now receiving evacuees and other travelers from the voyage. Sources are available at sitrepbrief.com.